I have a little segment where we're going to go over the top 10 weed moments in history.
Let's do it.
And I mean,
I
I
wanna
looked at
know.
some of the lists. I try not to look at everything ahead of time because I want this element of my own reaction to this.
Okay.
But I did take a peek at it, and again, like, okay, some of this
let's
is
see.
it's debatable. It's
It's
debatable.
debatable. Okay, it's
All right.
debatable.
All right, so control room. There we go. That camera is awfully zoomed in on me. If you can fix that, that'd be great. Let's put up the slides that I have. Yeah, there we go.
We're gonna test some knowledge right now.
So I don't know if you want to put those in picture on the bottom. We can do that. That's fine. Top 10 moments in weed history. I don't know if these are in any order, but let's do the first one, and we'll go around. We'll talk about this. All right, Todd, lay it on us.
Okay. Emperor Shen Nung uses cannabis medicinally in China.
What year?
2737 BC.
Oof.
So that's a long time ago.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah.
So I guess this is chronicled, I guess. The OG of ganja, documented use of weed for pain and illness over 4,000 years ago. That's ancient medicine right there.
For sure.
Emperor Shen. Have you heard of Emperor Shen Nung? I have not.
Well, not of the emperor, but yeah, like China, you know, how like hemp and it being used medicinally goes way back to China. Yeah, for sure.
How
Yeah.
about you, Hurst? Do you know anything about
I thought
this
beyond
emperor
that too.
by any
Beyond
chance?
that.
You know, I've seen his name in this context a lot, but, you know, do I know much about him? Not really. But I think,
Gotcha.
you know, yeah.
Hey,
Well, you
thanks
heard,
for-
he
Yeah.
knows more than we. He heard of it.
It's funny how, you know, cannabis was used by many people, many cultures, and all of a sudden it was illegal.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Yeah. There's a whole story to that. Yeah, right.
All right. So that's the. I think these are in chronological order. So this is the oldest one we have.
That makes sense.
This is the oldest one
Yeah,
we
that's
have.
old as hell.
Let's do it.
All right. So we go all the way to
Wow.
1937 from there, and this is the Marijuana Tax Act passes in the U.S. So 1937, the first U.S. federal criminalization of weed. The government criminalizes weed, kicking off decades of prohibition and the birth of the black market.
Wow.
So this was kind of like, Hirsch, this kind of rubs up against what you were talking about earlier, correct?
Totally. It absolutely is. And Harry Anslinger, the guy who I mentioned earlier, was intimately involved in, you know, as the slide said, this is the first policy of prohibition, right, in modern America.
Interesting.
That's very interesting.
So on the last, and Steve, just so you know, on the last interview, I think one of the things we determined is that we'd like to do a show where we just go back and really draw the origins to the individuals who really steered this
Down the
Looking
wrong
back
way.
in the
this
history.
this criminal act that they did.
Yeah. I totally agree.
We're
with
gonna
you.
put their names on our walls too, and then bust on them all the time.
Right?
Yeah, we need to
Yeah.
put them up and, you know, talk about them, break them down. Maybe we'll find some of their ancestors.
I was just thinking we can get their
get
ancestors
their
in here.
ancestors and say, "What's up?"
Yeah, someone's got to be held accountable for
You
this.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the sins of the father. Yeah.
And you know, what's crazy about the Marijuana Tax Act is it was a tax bill, right? What they
Yeah.
knew is that the power to tax is the power to destroy, essentially, right? Like if you tax something, you can basically tax it to death. So it's kind of fascinating. You know, that's what it did, right? It just imposed these insane taxes on them. Didn't make it illegal.
And that's a good point. And then the other thing is when was go back a slide if you can. But when was the alcohol prohibition? What year was that?
Well, that was in the 20s, right, or the 30s.
No, 20.
It was repealed.
It's like 20.
It was 1919 to 1933.
Okay.
In 33, it was repealed. When FDR became president, that was one of the first things that was done.
So from 33 to 37, was it the fact that they now determined that there needs to be something else that they go after? Since they were done with alcohol?
I mean,
yeah.
I think without question, that's a huge part of it.
Shit.
Well, you know, you're messing up that underground revenue, you know, from the alcohol. You know, they had to shut this down.
Yeah, that's
You know?
crazy.
There will be no alternatives to our bootleg.
All right. We'll get to the bottom of this. Next. 1971, Nixon declares the war on drugs. Weed classified as Schedule 1. Nixon targets cannabis in a racially charged campaign that shaped U.S. drug policy for generations. Nixon didn't do us any favors, man. He didn't do anybody any
He
favors.
sure didn't.
He hated everybody. He hated black people. He hated Jews. He hated everybody.
The war on drugs was a horrible thing, and it was just a mess, and they need to clean it up.
I mean, that's kind of why policy is changing now. Like, it's been agreed and universally acknowledged that it was a complete failure.
Yeah.
Pull that mic up, Steve, to you.
Yes, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, interesting. All right, then in go ahead, you go. You read it.
Okay, 1972. Schaefer Commission recommends decriminalization and gets ignored. The president's own commission recommended decriminalizing marijuana. He ignored it. We could have been free in the 1970s.
So a year later, after he announces the war on drugs, then the Schaefer Commission.
I didn't even know about that one. Yeah.
So that was direct opposition to that, I take.
Yeah, I don't know.
To
Totally.
Nixon's stance. Yeah. 1 year
I
later.
mean, Nixon famously ignored the recommendations of his own commission, right? He put that commission together, basically asking them to declare cannabis to be evil, but the commission did their work for a year, came to the opposite conclusion, and then Nixon famously ignored that report.
Well, that's power, right? That's the powers that be. They can do what they want. It's just like what
Power politics.
What
That's
was that?
what's
So they got the commission together in the NFL with the Deshaun Watson situation,
yeah.
right? So they said that because we know the commissioner has a lot of miscues. So they said let's get an independent committee to determine what the sanction should be. So they did it, came up with a solution, and he didn't like it, throw it out. So what's the use?
All right.
Too much power.
All right, the next one. 1996, California legalizes medical marijuana, the famous Prop 215.
Yeah.
And that changed the game.
Yeah, that
That's
was the first
game
one.
changer there.
And that gave everybody a lot of hope, too. Like, I think that was the first eye-opener for any level of hope. That was it, right?
I mean, looking back, that's kind of seems to be where the entire culture started to shift, right? It was from it being illegal, it being this kind of behind the doors thing, and all of a sudden it was something you could do. It was something you're allowed to do.
It was legitimized.
Yeah, that was
for the first time.
Game
even in the
changer.
language. Like,
What do you think, Hirsch? 215.
I think you guys said it perfectly, right? It was you guys said it perfectly, right? It was the first time any state had declared cannabis has medical utility, like you said.
So they went from the innovator, the starter, to being frowned upon right now.
That's what's crazy, yeah. Quite frankly, yeah.
I
Wow.
think that's the biggest way the culture of it has shifted. Like, it's not that kind of
It's not a
bad boy thing anymore.
Right, it's not bad anymore.
It's not a rebellion anymore. It's just normal.
It's social.
Yeah, that's nuts, man. All right, 2012, Colorado and Washington. This, again, was a big one. Legalized rec. And that was... Colorado was first in the sequence, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
But that kicked off something even more different than Prop 215. Prop 215 was kind of on the hope side that there's some level of movement.
It's out there somewhere.
And the movement is moving.
Happening.
Right? But this was where you could literally get on a plane and go do what you've always wanted to do, which is walk into a store, be able to make a purchase, and do it all legally.
A gold rush for Colorado.
It was a gold rush.
That's what everybody was promising at that point. Like,
People took notice of their revenue.
Go.
Now, without getting terribly political, I also think that this was, in 2012, the beginning of the Colorado purple to blue movement.
Okay. I hadn't thought about that.
I really do, because Colorado was traditionally a red state that kind of worked its way purple and then blue.
Interesting. Okay.
And so did this
for them to come through with this legally years ago was kind of odd.
But I tell you, I made multiple trips to Denver. I loved going to Denver. I made special trips just for that. I enjoyed the hell out of it. But I really wonder, like, does does that or did this play a role in the politics in the state? And I almost have to think it did. What do you think, Hirsch?
I think you're totally right. Like Obama was the first Democrat who would really win Colorado. If you remember his first convention, they had it in Denver, right? That was like the center of gravity. And one thing I want to say, I have a friend named Steve Fox, who was one of the main campaign men in Colorado. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago, but really legendary too, who helped shepherd that legalization campaign forward. And he wrote this book called, and this was the slogan of the campaign, regulate cannabis like alcohol. So just like you guys were saying, this was different. This was the first time, he said,
Right.
hey, adults should have the right to use this, not just for medical purposes, but the right of adulthood. So shout out to Steve Fox, who passed away a few years ago, but really good. I would say
Yeah,
the
shout
genius
Yeah,
out.
big ups.
Shout out to Steve.
Big ups.
Yeah, shout out to Steve for sure. And I hate to see when the good ones go like that because here he is making a big difference in the game. So that's
Yeah.
unfortunate, but nice to bring it up, Hirsch. Nice to bring that up. 2018, another big one. Canada fully legalizes cannabis.
Yeah.
I remember that one.
Yeah, ball's starting to roll
I was
now,
there
yeah.
for that one, and that was I think that was kind of momentum from what they saw here. That was Canada reacting to what they saw here, but they decided not to tiptoe.
They took it to another level.
They jumped right on in.
Yeah.
And then we also just found out on Hirsch's interview on our last show is that Canada exports to Germany.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I knew Germany was like expanding their market, so
And
they
so
were
that,
looking
and
to
that's
import
how and that's how it's supposed to work, right?
Well, that's the
Cream
global
rises
world
to the
we're in,
top. People can put together, operate in a free market, compete on price, compete on quality, not on whether you have a captive market or not.
But I mean, if California could ship weed or
Wow.
marijuana, it would kill everybody else, wouldn't it? That's I'm sure everybody else wants to.
Well,
But I would
tuck it
say
away.
I would say that was more true before
yeah.
now because now you've got states that
Got
have
cultivators all over now.
right.
That's true.
So now
it's even.
We can all join
so
in.
now
bigger.
everyone can join in, but it's also like I said, cream to the crop. It's going to weed out a lot of people.
Yeah,
But it would be great
that's
for
true.
California,
Oh,
just
they-
for
they
the
would-
reputation,
they would
the
conquer-
bud, the
they'll conquer
climate.
the world.
Yeah,
They're already the world's
absolutely.
fifth biggest economy. Is
If
that-
I'm somewhere, let's say I'm on vacation, I'm in Germany, and I'm going to a dispensary, give me that Cali weed.
Right on.
You feel me?
Right on.
everywhere.
And listen, if you're buying black market, you're buying, you're pretty much buying Cali or Maine weed, at least around
True.
here. So, all right, 2020, the MORE Act passes the House for the first time. And what the MORE Act is it's decriminalization in Congress. Congress takes a big step, though it's stalled in the Senate. This marked serious federal momentum. I don't know much about the MORE Act. Do
Honestly,
you?
I did not.
I do
really
not.
don't.
Hirsch, you want to fill us in? Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, the MORE Act is significant because it was the first time a legalization bill had passed one of the branches of Congress, like the slide just said, right? It passed the House, but it didn't pass the Senate. So it's a big deal in that respect. Ultimately, right, because it didn't pass the Senate, obviously it never took effect, right? So it's symbolic of a victory.
Yeah.
The other thing about the MORE Act is it was definitely very left-leaning, right? And so that's cool, right? But it wasn't a surprise that it didn't pass with the Republicans in the Senate because it was, a very, this is back when the Democrats controlled the House and the Speaker, right? So they were kind of making a statement with the bill, but Mitch McConnell was never going to.
So it was standing up and saying,
Yeah,
putting in the opinion, the side, the voice out there.
Yeah.
yeah.
I respect that.
Yeah.
I respect that.
Yeah.
But I did not know about. Was not aware of that one.
So yeah, it's and that's the thing. I think it's a symbolic thing.
Uh-huh.
It's a symbolic stop on the roadmap, right?
Yeah. Well, when you mentioned Senator Mitch McConnell, you know what he's about now. He's going to stop anything and everything just for the cause. So that's a hard
Facts.
to get through that.
Yeah, Mitch McConnell. He's all
He's a company man.
Dumb bitch.
right. So all right, 2022. Why don't you read this? This is your buddy.
Okay, in 2022, Biden begins cannabis pardon and rescheduling review. POTUS finally steps in. Mass pardons for simple possession and a possible reschedule review. It's not everything, but it's something. So I think that's, it's.
But he really didn't. He didn't do that much. He said he was going to do it. I mean, I don't know. Am I wrong or right?
I feel like I applaud it. I was about it. But is this a big moment? I think it was kind of an ineffective moment. I didn't think it really. It was him just kind of ticking a box and kind of
Right.
giving
Instead of
us,
grabbing hold
giving
and
us what
really,
we wanted.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
more of a campaign. I think it was more of a campaign type of thing. And then,
And then nothing came of it. The rescheduling. Now it's just a
he
political
probably gave.
argument.
I mean, he gave more pardons
Well,
out to
not really
people at
anything
the end
now.
of his presidency to people who didn't even have crimes accused against them than he probably did for cannabis.
But it was a good thing to acknowledge that people have been hurt by this unjust war. So that
Right.
I mean, it's a good perspective that somebody of
Acknowledge.
high importance is actually
Yeah.
acknowledging that. So
But now
that
need
was a
some
good
oomph.
thing.
Need some oomph behind it.
You are fake news.
Well, that's what Trump says.
Oh,
So,
ironic.
so, and then the last one, and this is interesting because here we just talked about this. Go ahead.
Germany.
Yeah.
Germany in 2024.
Last-
Germany legalizes adult use weed. Europe joins the movement. Germany becomes the largest EU economy to legalize. The global domino effect is officially underway. I think this is huge. You mentioned that, Hirsch. Germany and their market and what they're doing there.
And they're
Yeah.
setting the stage for.
That was
Europe.
good news to hear.
And from what I heard is everyone's kind of falling in line except Spain. Spain's kind of like
Is holding back a
a
little
little
bit.
back.
I mean, I think yeah.
That's
I
coming
think we
from a
get-
country that still does siestas.
Well, yeah, they need to.
So I don't know what the fuck they're thinking.
Well,
'Cause
they-
what's better than a siesta and
Well,
a
they
little-
like shit. They
still
already
stands
taking
up.
a nap. You don't need two of them. Shit.
drinking enough sherry, they're okay.
Is that the last slide? I'm assuming. Maybe there's another one. I don't know.
But yeah, that's huge for the world,
So,
though. Huge for the
road
world.
trip.
Is there another one? Is that it?
Oh yeah, did we hit 10?
That is it.
We did 10.
We did 10. I don't know. That was.
No,
All right. What do you
I
think?
liked it.
Yeah,
It's-
well, I learned a couple things.
Yeah, like the emperor.
The emperor, what's that, 2737 BC?
Yeah.
And the Moore Act, I didn't know much about. Thanks for the elaboration. And, so you see there's the most interesting thing was Nixon trying to decriminalize, and then the next year, his own commission,
his own people. Yeah.
recommended decriminalize. So
Yeah,
that
just
was
the
pretty
boots
interesting.
Stomping it
Yeah.
down.
Yeah, I'm sure that I'd like to be a fly on that wall. But,
Nixon was a racist motherfucker.
Stupid.
He really was.
And Nixon, tricky
No,
dick.
Yeah, he does
Tricky
not have a
dick.
good legacy, man. He does not
You
have
think-
a good legacy.
You think Nixon was friends with Rizzo?
I think he was, and I think he also knew Trump too.
They're all the same person.